My name is Barbara Williams, and I'm 34 years old. The chandeliers above Lume glittered like frozen rain, each crystal drop reflecting faces full of polite cruelty. I adjusted the cuff of my plain black blazer, intentionally understated, and took a slow breath before walking in. This wasn't just dinner, it was a stage. And tonight, I intended to play my role perfectly. Victoria was already holding court at the center table, laughter polished to perfection. Her diamond bracelet catching the light every time she gestured. She looked like success sculpted into human form, a woman who'd built her entire personality around being admired. And me, I was her favorite story to tell her family's punchline. "Barbara," she exclaimed, voice dripping with that brittle sweetness she'd perfected over years. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "I said I would," I replied simply, sliding into the chair she'd strategically placed farthest from her, the one next to the waiter's station. The other guests smiled with polite curiosity. Her clients, old money, loud watches, soft hands that never held anything heavier than a glass of wine. They didn't know it yet, but tonight they'd all remember my name. Victoria tilted her head, examining my modest outfit. "You didn't mention it was at Lume, darling. You could have borrowed something more appropriate." I smiled faintly. I like being comfortable. That earned a few chuckles. Not from humor, from pity. She'd succeeded in painting me as the poor sister, the failure who'd lost her way after leaving corporate life. "This is Harrison Blake," Victoria said, gesturing to the distinguished man beside her. "He's considering bringing his company's portfolio to our firm. Harrison, this is my sister. She used to work in finance before." Before I decided boardrooms were full of noise, I said lightly, taking the wine list from the sommelier before Victoria could finish her favorite lie. "Ah," Harrison said with mild interest. "So you're between opportunities." The sommelier hovered, waiting. "The Chateau Lafite Rothschild, 1982, please." The table went still. Even the air seemed to pause. Victoria blinked. "Barbara, that bottle costs more than your comfort zone," I interrupted. "Put it on my usual account, Jean-Marc." The sommelier nodded with a deferential smile. "Of course, Miss Williams. Your regular table is ready if you'd prefer." Victoria's hand tightened around her napkin. "Your usual account." I didn't answer. The silence stretched. Then Harrison leaned forward, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Williams. Not Barbara Williams of Echelon Capital by any chance?" Victoria laughed a bit too quickly. "Don't be ridiculous. My sister runs—" "What is it, Barbara?" "A consulting hobby." Harrison's tone shifted. "Echelon Capital recently acquired Micro T Solutions. That was a $3 billion cash buyout." He studied me carefully. "That was you." Every fork froze midair. Victoria's face drained of color. "Microta was undervalued," I said evenly. "Their AI patents were worth twice that. It was a simple decision." Victoria stammered, "That can't be true. You live in an apartment I own, in a building I own." I looked her dead in the eye. "You should visit sometime. I just had the penthouse renovated." Harrison smiled slowly. "I didn't realize I was dining with one of the sharpest investors in the market. The takeover of Bennett Industries last year was legendary." "That one was personal," I said softly. "My sister used to manage their account." Victoria's lips trembled. You destroyed them." "Restructured," I corrected. "Efficiently." The waiter arrived with the wine. Victoria didn't touch her glass. "You could have told me," she whispered, voice cracking. "You never asked." I raised my glass, letting the deep red reflect in the crystal light. "It's funny, isn't it? How easily people underestimate what they don't bother to understand." As the wine flowed, so did the tension. Harrison's interest in me grew. Victoria's mask began to fracture. Each polite exchange sliced another thread of her composure. When dessert arrived, Harrison slid his business card toward me. "Let's discuss a potential partnership, Miss Williams. Privately." "Of course," I said, slipping it into my clutch. "I'll have my office reach out tomorrow." "Your office," Victoria repeated weakly. "The one in the Madison building," I said casually, watching her pupils contract. "That's your headquarters." I finished smiling. "Was, actually. The sale announcement goes live at 8 a.m. Her hand shook so violently she spilled her water. Around us, her clients were pretending not to stare, but they were listening. All of them were listening. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you made me invisible," I said. "And invisible people build empires while no one's looking." I straightened my blazer and left a generous tip on the table. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed, a message from Mother. "Victoria just called me crying. What did you do?" I smiled at the screen. "Nothing much," I typed back. Just told her the truth. Outside, the rain had started soft, cold cleansing. I tilted my face toward it and whispered, "You wanted a family story, Victoria. Here's the new chapter." By dawn, my phone was a battlefield buzzing with unread messages, flashing headlines, and desperate apologies disguised as curiosity. Overnight, the world had learned my name, Barbara Williams, the silent billionaire who built an empire in the shadows. I sat in the top floor office of Echelon Capital, a place my family believed didn't exist. From up here, the city looked like a map of consequences, each skyscraper. Another move I'd made while they weren't watching. The sun filtered through glass walls, reflecting against framed headlines of the companies I'd acquired. "Your sister's been in the lobby for 40 minutes, said Maya, my assistant, calm, composed, and dangerously perceptive. Her silver tablet glowed faintly in the morning light. "Security says she's tried 3 different names to get past reception." I glanced at the security feed. Victoria's once perfect composure was unraveling. Her hair, slightly disheveled, eyes swollen from a sleepless night. She looked smaller than I remembered. "Let her wait," I said, sipping my coffee. "She's always loved being the center of attention." Maya smirked slightly, then handed me a stack of morning reports. "Also, your father's tried calling 6 times. Your brother, twice. Your mother, 12. "Family reunion by phone," I murmured. "Want me to block them?" I hesitated. "No, let them think I'm listening. It'll make the silence heavier." Maya nodded, but as she turned, I caught a flicker of something in her expression. Sympathy or judgment. I couldn't tell. My phone buzzed again. "Dad," the name flashing like a warning light. I let it ring out. But then, as if on cue, my office door opened without permission. "Barbara." His voice carried decades of authority, though the edges had dulled. He entered with Thomas, my older brother, the family's reasonable one. They both looked uncomfortable in my space, as if the air here belonged to someone they couldn't quite understand. "Impressive view," Dad said, scanning the office. "Didn't think you'd still be in finance." "That's because you never asked," I replied. Thomas tried a gentler tone. "We need to talk about Victoria. She's devastated. What happened last night?" "Was inevitable," I interrupted. "You can only lie about someone for so long before the truth wants a seat at the table." Dad's jaw tightened. "You humiliated her in front of her clients. She says you blindsided her. Why would you do that to your own sister?" I stood walking toward the window, letting the silence stretch. "Because that's what she did to me. For years. Every dinner, every gathering, a casual performance of how I'd failed. But she didn't fail me, Father. You all did." "Barbara." "No," I turned sharply. "You believed her version of me. The fragile one. The disappointment. You taught me something valuable in doing so." Thomas frowned. "And what's that?" "That power is quietest when it's growing." Dad sank into the visitor chair, eyes flicking across my desk documents stamped Phoenix Ventures, Echelon Holdings, and finally one that made him pale Williams Consulting Equity Transfer. His voice cracked. This is our family company. You bought into it." "Not bought," I corrected, "acquired." "You can't mean—" "I own 51%, I said simply. As of this morning." Thomas grabbed the file, scanning the pages. "She's telling the truth, Dad." "This is madness," he snapped. "You think you can just take over what your father built?" "I already have." The silence that followed was thick enough to feel. The ticking of my minimalist wall clock sounded like a countdown. Dad rose slowly. "You've gone too far." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "I've gone exactly far enough. For once, I'm not beneath your control, or Victoria's shadow." Maya's voice interrupted through the intercom. "Ms. Williams, Victoria is now attempting to enter through the service corridor." Dad's face twisted. "She's desperate, Barbara. End this madness before it destroys the family." "The family," I repeated softly, "was destroyed years ago. I just built something from the wreckage." Thomas stepped closer, his voice quieter. "Barbara, you don't need to prove anything anymore." "I'm not proving," I said. "I'm reclaiming." As they left, Dad muttered, "You're making enemies you'll regret." When the door closed, I turned to the glass wall, separating my office from the city, the reflection of a woman they'd never bothered to see. Maya stood at the threshold. Should I send Victoria away? I thought for a moment, then shook my head. No. Tell security to let her in. Maya nodded and started to leave, but then paused, her voice softer than usual. "Barbara, do you ever miss them?" I looked down at my trembling hands and whispered, "Every day." She said nothing more, but as she walked away, I caught her phone screen lighting up with a message before she locked it. "She's escalating faster than planned. Keep her under control." Outside my window, the city stretched endlessly, glittering, watching, waiting. And somewhere below, my sister was climbing her way up to me through the ruins of the empire she thought she ruled. The elevator doors slid open with a muted chime, revealing the marble lobby of the Madison building. Once Victoria's territory, now mine. Every polished tile, every glass panel reflected her downfall. My heels echoed against the floor, each step deliberate, controlled. The receptionist glanced up nervously. She already knew who signed her paychecks now. "Good morning, Ms. Williams," she stammered. I gave a polite nod. "How's morale today?" She hesitated. "Quiet. Half the staff hasn't shown up. They're waiting to see what happens." "Understandable," I said, stepping toward the executive elevators. Change has a way of separating the loyal from the comfortable. The ride to the top floor felt endless. My reflection stared back at me in the mirrored walls, sharp suit, calm expression, the mask I'd built from years of silence. Beneath it, my pulse beat a private rhythm of guilt and satisfaction. The top floor was deserted. Victoria's office, her throne, still carried the scent of her designer perfume. I ran my hand across her desk, remembering how she once told me I'd never set foot here except to deliver coffee. Now I owned the building that housed her humiliation. Behind me, Maya appeared, soundlessly holding a tablet. "The press is already speculating about your next acquisition," she said. Harrison Blake's firm released a statement confirming preliminary talks. "Good," I replied. The timing couldn't be better. Maya hesitated. "And your sister?" "She's downstairs," I said. "Let her wander. This place still believes it belongs to her, for now." Maya studied me carefully. "You're enjoying this." I turned to her, voice even. "You don't build an empire for enjoyment, Maya. You build it to never be powerless again." Her eyes softened. "Is that what this is about, power?" "No," I said quietly. "It's about memory." I walked toward the window overlooking the city, our city. Every time Victoria called me a failure, every time my father said I lacked vision, I remembered. I listened. And I learned. For a moment, the silence between us felt heavier than glass. Then Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen too quickly. I caught only a glimpse, an unknown number, the text preview reading. "Update me when she cracks." "Maya," I said softly, "everything okay?" She blinked, composed. "Yes, just a logistics update." I didn't press, though. A quiet unease rippled through me. Trust was a luxury I'd long stopped affording anyone. Down below, through the window, I could see movement at the entrance, Victoria standing in the rain, again arguing with security. Her umbrella had snapped in the wind. She looked lost, drenched, desperate. "Let her in," I said finally. Maya frowned. "Are you sure?" "She won't leave until I let her say what she came to say, and I'd rather hear it on my terms." 5 minutes later, Victoria stepped into her old office. Her once flawless hair clung to her cheeks. Mascara streaked like bruises under her eyes. She still carried herself with a fragile echo of dignity. Old habits die hard. "You had no right," she said, voice trembling. "I had every right," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Sit." "I won't. You stole my company." "I bought it," I corrected. "Legally, efficiently, the way you once said business should be done." She took a shaky breath. Why Barbara was humiliating me not enough. "This isn't about humiliation," I said. "It's about truth." She laughed bitterly. "Truth, you mean revenge. You think you're different from Dad or me. You're not. You're just colder." Her words stung more than I expected. I took a long breath, forcing composure. "Maybe cold is what you become when warmth has always burned you." Her expression faltered. For a moment, the distance between us felt smaller. Two sisters, once inseparable, standing in the ruins of what love used to mean. "I used to admire you," she whispered. "Do you remember that? Before Dad decided I was the golden child. Before he made me believe stepping on you was the only way to stay seen." Something broke in her voice, something almost human. But then it hardened again. "You've taken everything. What's left?" I looked at her and said, "Reflection." She blinked. "What?" "Look around," I said softly. "This is what you built your life on. Appearances. Control. Power that crumbles the moment someone stops believing in your myth." She swallowed hard. "You think you've won Barbara, but you don't know how our family plays the long game." Her tone shifted, quietly threatening. It wasn't desperation now. It was warning. Before I could respond, Maya reappeared at the door. "Ms. Williams, the board of Williams Consulting, has just requested an emergency session." Victoria smirked faintly. "See, the game's already started." I dismissed her with a glance, though my pulse quickened. "Prepare the conference room, Maya." As I turned to leave, Victoria called out, "You've become exactly what he wanted you to be." I froze. "A mirror of Dad," she said. "Only smarter. And meaner." I walked out without responding, but her words followed me into the elevator, echoing with every floor I descended. By the time the doors opened again, I wasn't sure if I'd won or just inherited the ghosts that haunted this building. The conference room was colder than I remembered. Dark wood, old portraits, and the faint scent of arrogance. Everything about this space, screamed Father. When I was a little girl, I used to sit outside this room waiting for him to finish meetings so we could drive home together. He never looked at me when he walked past. He'd just murmur, "Not now, Barbara." Today, I sat at the head of his table. Ms. Williams said one of the board members nervously as I entered, "Your father, your sister, and your mother are all here," they insisted. "Let them in," I said, voice calm, though my heart was a steady drum beneath my ribs. The door opened. My father walked in first, same deliberate gait, same air of entitlement, but the confidence in his eyes had cracks. Behind him came Victoria, red-eyed but determined, and Mother clutching her pearl necklace as though it could protect her from what was about to happen. "Barbara, Mother started this has gone far enough. Whatever anger you have, whatever pain—" "This isn't about pain," I interrupted quietly. "It's about correction." Father slammed his hand on the table. "You're tearing this family apart. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I met his gaze evenly. "I rebuilt what you broke." Victoria scoffed. "Rebuilt? You humiliated us, stole our company, and turned the press against us." I leaned forward. "You spread rumors about my mental breakdown. You told investors I was unstable, untrustworthy, just because I didn't play your game." Victoria's voice cracked. "Dad told me to." The words hung in the air like a confession no one wanted to touch. Father's jaw tightened. "That's not true." "Yes, it is," Mother whispered. "You said if the world saw Barbara as a failure, no one would question why you left her out of the company." The room went silent. Even the ticking clock seemed to hold its breath. Father's tone turned icy. "You're twisting my words." "No," I said softly. "She's not." I stood and walked toward him, holding out a folder, the same one I'd shown Thomas earlier. "These are your company's internal memos from 5 years ago. You told your PR team to protect the Williams name from my decisions. You called me a liability." He looked down, speechless. For once, the man who'd built an empire from his voice had nothing left to say. Mother reached for my hand, tears glinting in her eyes. "Darling, we were only trying to keep you safe. You were young, reckless. We were afraid success would change you." I pulled my hand back gently. "You were afraid it wouldn't. You were afraid I'd prove I didn't need your permission to succeed." Victoria's voice trembled. "We're family, Barbara. You don't destroy your own blood." "No," I said. "But you drain it, drop by drop, don't you? Until the person's hollow enough to fill with your stories." Mother sobbed quietly. Father turned away, shoulders sagging. Victoria's lips trembled. The facade was breaking. "You always wanted validation," she said bitterly. "Is this it? Is this your grand revenge?" I took a slow breath. "No. This is me taking back what was mine all along, respect." Victoria laughed through tears. "Respect. You've turned yourself into a ghost. No friends, no love, no warmth. You think power will keep you company when you're alone?" For a moment, her words pierced deeper than I wanted to admit, but I couldn't show it. Maya appeared quietly at the door, her voice steady but urgent. "Ms. Williams, we need to wrap this up. The shareholders are waiting." I turned back to my family. "You can stay and watch what real leadership looks like, or you can leave with whatever pride you still have left." Mother whispered, "You're just like him." That one hit harder than I expected. "I'm nothing like him," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it anymore. As they filed out, Victoria stopped in the doorway. "Careful, Barbara. You're not the only Williams who knows how to fight dirty." I didn't respond. I just looked past her at my reflection in the glass wall, the face of someone who'd spent years trying not to become the very thing she despised. When they were gone, I exhaled slowly. The ache in my chest was sharp but strangely hollow. Victory without joy, a crown made of glass. Maya lingered by the table. "Are you all right?" I stared at the empty chairs where my family had sat. "Ask me when it's over." "Will it ever be over?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew the truth. Revenge never ends. It just changes faces. Morning sunlight slanted across the polished mahogany table, cutting the boardroom into stripes of gold and shadow. The air was electric too, still too aware. The men and women who'd once treated me like an afterthought were all seated now waiting. Waiting to see if the rumors were true. Waiting to see if the daughter they dismissed had come to take the empire her father built. I walked in without a word. The click of my heels louder than anyone's breathing. At the head of the table sat my father, the throne he refused to give up, even as he lost the kingdom. Victoria hovered near him, a defiant statue in a designer suit, her makeup immaculate, but her hands shaking. Barbara Father began, voice gravelly, "This farce ends today. You have no legal standing to sit here." I set a folder on the table and slid it toward him. "You really should read the documents before repeating old scripts. I walked in months ago. You just didn't notice because you were too busy dismissing me." He ignored the folder. "This company exists because of me. Every contract was secured with my investment," I interrupted, tapping the folder. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to lead." Victoria let out a soft, incredulous laugh. "Lead, you mean ruin. You've turned our family name into gossip fodder. The press is calling you ruthless." I smiled faintly. "They called you the same thing once. Remember how proud you were of that headline?" Her smile wavered. The board members shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged glances, quiet admissions of curiosity, perhaps even awe. "I've distributed the voting records," I continued. "As of this morning, I hold 51% of Williams Consulting through Phoenix Ventures, which means by law, I'm now the majority shareholder and acting CEO." Gasps rippled around the table. Father's voice rose. "This is betrayal." "No," I said, calm as glass. "This is accountability." Before he could answer, the door opened, and Harrison Blake walked in, trailed by 3 of his senior executives. He looked at me first, then at Victoria. "We had a meeting scheduled," he said politely, with Phoenix Capital. Victoria's complexion drained. "Harrison, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." He took a seat beside me. "We've concluded negotiations with Ms. Williams. Her acquisition strategy aligns with our goals." "You can't be serious," Victoria hissed. "We've known each other for years." And yet Harrison replied, "Your sister accomplished in silence what your firm couldn't in a decade." A visible crack appeared in her facade. The pen in her hand snapped, leaving a smear of ink across her palm. "This is about revenge," Father said, leaning forward. "You're punishing us for not believing in you." "No," I replied evenly. "This is about evolution. You taught me that business is a battlefield. I just stopped fighting for scraps." I tapped the remote, and the projection screen behind me lit up charts, data losses trends, client retention down 40%, innovation stagnating, market share declining. You were coasting on legacy while the market passed you by. One of the older board members cleared his throat. "She's right. We've been in decline for 3 years. We needed change." Father glared at him. "You're siding with her." The man shrugged. "I'm siding with results." Victoria's voice wavered. "This isn't business anymore, Barbara. It's personal." I looked at her and said quietly, "It became personal the moment you decided my failures were your entertainment." The screen behind me shifted again, this time showing the new Williams Consulting logo under Echelon Capital Group. The merger was already signed. "This can't be legal," Father snapped. "It's airtight," I replied. "Every acquisition, every transfer, every board vote, all properly executed. The lawyers can confirm." At that moment, Maya entered with a sleek folder and set it in front of me. "The contracts are finalized," she said, her tone smooth as silk. "All that's left is your signature." I looked up. "Thank you, Maya." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "How long have you been planning this?" 5 years, I said. "Since the day you told your friends I'd had a nervous breakdown." The boardroom was silent, except for the faint hum of the projector. Outside, rain streaked the glass walls like veins of light. Father stood abruptly. "I won't let you destroy what I built." "You already did," I said softly. "I'm just salvaging what's left." Then I looked at him directly. "You'll announce your retirement effective immediately. Victoria, your position as head of client relations is terminated. Everyone else will remain under review." "You can't." "I can," I said, cutting him off. And I have. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, one by one, the board members began to nod. Not out of loyalty, out of inevitability. As Father's shoulders sagged, Victoria whispered, "You think this makes you strong. You've become him." I paused. Maybe. Or maybe I've become what he feared I'd be untouchable. At that, Harrison stood, sliding his business card across the table. "Congratulations, Ms. Williams. We'll be in touch about our patents." The meeting ended with murmurs and shuffling papers. My family stayed seated, frozen in disbelief. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. A message from Maya flashed on the screen. "They're calling an emergency vote. Someone's leaking information to the board." My stomach tightened. I glanced up. Victoria was already watching me with a faint, knowing smile. "Careful, little sister," she said softly. "You're not the only one who knows how to play this game." The storm outside had grown louder, battering the glass walls of my office like a warning I refused to hear. The city skyline blurred behind the rain, fractured and shifting, much like the ground beneath me. It was just past midnight when Maya entered, pale and tense. They've called an emergency board vote, she said. Victoria convinced 3 shareholders to challenge your control. I didn't look up from the contract I was reviewing. Let them vote. Her voice tightened. Barbara, you're underestimating them. I raised my eyes. I've spent my entire life being underestimated. It's their favorite mistake. But something in Maya's expression unsettled me. Guilt, fear, maybe both. I set the papers down slowly. How long have you known about this? She hesitated, long enough to try to stop it quietly. I stood, or long enough to help them plan it. Her jaw clenched. Don't. I stepped closer. You've been my right hand for 5 years, the only person I trusted to guard my silence. So if this leak didn't come from you, it came from someone who wants to destroy you, she snapped. And if you keep assuming everyone's your enemy, you'll hand them the win yourself. Her voice broke through my composure like a crack in glass. I turned away, my reflection flickering in the window, strong but shaking. Prepare the boardroom, I said. I'll face them now. When I walked in, they were already waiting, the same faces who had applauded my takeover mere days ago, now restless, divided. My father sat at the far end, hands folded like a man at his own funeral. Victoria beside him radiated triumph, disguised as pity. Barbara, she began smoothly, you've accomplished a great deal, but you've also created instability. Clients are nervous. Investors are questioning your methods. I took my seat at the head of the table. And what exactly are they questioning? The profits, the performance, the record-breaking acquisitions. They're questioning you, she said, her tone cutting. You built this empire alone in secret. No transparency, no oversight. That's not leadership, it's obsession. Her words landed like daggers because somewhere beneath the armor, a small part of me knew she wasn't wrong. A senior shareholder cleared his throat. Per the bylaws, we've called this emergency vote to determine whether Ms. Barbara Williams retains her position as acting CEO. I looked around the table, 12 faces, most of whom I'd saved from financial ruin. And yet loyalty in business was as fragile as reputation. Victoria folded her hands. You've done impressive work, sister, but power has a way of eroding judgment. I'm offering the board an alternative leadership with stability, with heart. Leadership built on betrayal, I said quietly. She smiled. You call it betrayal. I call it balance. The vote began. Hands raised one after another, slow, deliberate. The first 3 went to Victoria, the next 4 to me, a tie halfway through. Maya entered silently and handed me a folder. Proxy votes, she whispered. I opened it and froze. The missing votes, the ones I'd secured weeks ago, were gone. Revoked. Victoria leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Looks like your empire wasn't as airtight as you thought. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. Before you cast the final vote, I said, rising from my chair, you should see what you're actually voting for. I turned the projector on. The screen behind me filled with confidential documents, emails, and transfers, all tracing back to Victoria. Insider leaks, falsified reports, and a series of under-the-table deals she'd made to sabotage my acquisitions. The board erupted in whispers. Victoria's face blanched. You forged those. Try again, I said, nodding to Maya. She projected time-stamped video evidence, security footage from Victoria's office, her voice unmistakable, instructing an associate to leak internal losses to the press before Barbara can spin them. End the vote, one board member said sharply. The chairman nodded. We have sufficient evidence. The motion to remove Ms. Williams is void. Victoria's voice rose in panic. You planted that. You've always been one step ahead. How could anyone compete with you? I walked toward her slowly, voice low, but trembling with controlled fury. You could have been on my side, Victoria. You could have been part of it. But you were too afraid of living in a world where I wasn't beneath you. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You've turned into something worse than Dad. You talk about truth and power, but all you want is to watch us break. I stared at her for a long moment, then quietly said, Maybe I did. Maybe that's all that's left of me. Security entered at my signal. Escort Ms. Victoria Williams out of the building, permanently. As she was led away, she twisted to look back at me. You'll end up alone, Barbara, like all of us. The door shut behind her. The room was silent again, but the silence no longer felt victorious. It felt hollow. Maya approached, her voice gentle now. It's over. No, I said, looking out at the storm through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It's never over. Not when the battle's in your blood. Thunder rolled outside, long, low, and final. Night had settled over the city like velvet smoke. From my office on the 57th floor, the skyline shimmered. A crown of lights resting on the empire I'd built. My empire. And yet for the first time in years, I couldn't feel its weight. Maya stood by the door, tablet in hand, her usual calm fraying around the edges. All the statements have gone out, she said softly. The board is secured under your leadership. Victoria's been officially removed. Your father tendered his resignation at 6 p.m. I nodded, my eyes still on the horizon. And my mother. She called twice, Maya said. Left a voicemail. Do you want me to play it? No. My voice came out sharper than intended, then quieter. Not yet. Maya hesitated. The press is calling this the most elegant corporate coup of the decade. The silent queen, they're calling you. Queens don't win without blood, I murmured. She paused as if wanting to say something more, but thought better of it. I'll leave you to rest. As the door clicked shut behind her, the office fell into stillness, the kind of silence that magnified every heartbeat. On the glass wall opposite me hung the reflection of a woman in a midnight suit backlit by a city she now owned. She looked powerful, untouchable, and completely alone. My phone buzzed a new message. Mother. Against my better judgment, I played the voicemail. Barbara, darling, you've won. I suppose I should congratulate you, but I keep wondering, does it feel like love? Because that's what you were chasing all along, wasn't it? Our love, your father's approval, your sister's respect. I hope you found it, sweetheart, even if none of us deserve it. The message ended with a faint sniffle. For the first time in weeks, I felt something slip inside me, a crack I couldn't seal with logic or victory. The door opened softly behind me. You shouldn't be here this late, came a familiar voice. I turned. Harrison Blake, the man whose company had once been my greatest rival, now my most valuable partner. He held 2 glasses and a bottle of the same 1982 Lafite we'd ordered at that dinner the night everything began. I thought we'd toast, he said, setting the glasses down, to the woman who just outmaneuvered half the city. I allowed a faint smile. Careful, Harrison. Aligning with me doesn't always end well for people. I've noticed, he said with quiet amusement. But then maybe that's the price of brilliance. We clinked glasses. The wine was rich, smooth tasting of victory and regret. Tell me something, he said after a pause. Was it worth it? I stared at the liquid swirling in my glass. Ask me when I can sleep without hearing my sister's voice. He studied me for a long moment. You remind me of myself 20 years ago, he said finally. Built everything, lost everyone. Power can be intoxicating, but it doesn't warm you at night. Then why chase it? Because once you've been powerless, he said, you can never bear the feeling again. His words landed somewhere deep in the place where fear masquerades as drive. After he left, I remained by the window. Below the Madison building stood in shadow, empty now, hollow, waiting for its next tenant. It looked like a monument to ambition, beautiful and dead. Maya's voice came through the intercom softly. Everyone's gone home, Ms. Williams. Do you need anything? I pressed the button. No Maya, just the quiet. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline, faint and distant like applause fading after the curtain falls. I looked at my reflection one last time, the woman who had clawed her way from humiliation to power, from silence to dominance. Her crown glittered, but her eyes looked tired. And for a fleeting second, I wondered if Victoria had been right, if I'd become everything I swore I'd never be. I whispered to the glass. They said I couldn't handle pressure. Maybe they were right. Then I lifted my chin, meeting my own gaze, steady, unflinching. I just learned to turn it into diamonds. The city lights flickered below, as if bowing in reluctant acknowledgement. Because in the end, the empire I'd built wasn't made of gold or glass. It was made of ashes, the ashes of every bridge I'd burned to rise above them all.